They expected fear. That was their first mistake. Inside the cold, humming chamber of the Galactic Empire's flagship Voractel, surrounded by 7-foot alien warlords in ceremonial armor and bio-enhanced enforcers with plasma for veins, sat a single human woman, unshackled, unarmed, and utterly unimpressed. Her name was Arden Cross, 25 years old, Earthborn, former astrophysicist, current enigma. She sat on the curved metallic bench like she owned the place, one leg crossed over the other, fingers drumming a lazy beat against her knee. Her face was bruised, lip bloodied, hair tangled from the extraction, but her eyes were calm, dangerously calm. Across from her, Grand Inquisitor Jeeve tilted his elongated head, his third eye twitching slightly as it struggled to read her biofeedback. "There is no detectable anxiety," he said, voice processed through the room's universal translator. No fear response. No elevated cortisol. Not even an adrenaline spike. Admiral Zeller snarled from the observation bay above. "She's broken then." "Unlikely," Jeeve replied. "She is watching us." Arden grinned, tilting her head toward the mirrored wall where she knew 100 alien eyes hid behind one-way tech. "Tell the Admiral I can hear him breathing. Sounds like someone's constipated." Jeeve blinked. She leaned forward. "Go ahead, scan me again. Maybe next time your machines will find the part of me that gives a damn." He stared at her in silence. Then, quietly, "You are not afraid." She gestured around the room. "Oh, you're scary, sure. The decor could use work, though. Feels like a dentist's office on a war crime budget." The lights dimmed slightly as the ship adjusted orbit around the Empire's central planet. From the viewports beyond, the Empire's might could be seen. 100 planetary systems, trillions of sentient beings, fleets of star-crushing dreadnoughts. A civilization that had brought galaxies to heel. And here sat a single human woman, smirking like she'd seen worse. Admiral Zeller descended the steps into the chamber. His armor hissed with kinetic plating. He towered above her, exuding authority and the kind of ego born from never once losing a battle. "Human," he said, voice thick with the disdain only a conqueror could afford. "Your species is insignificant. You were taken for interrogation because you are convenient." "You talk a lot for a guy who couldn't stop me from boarding his ship," she replied, picking dirt from under her fingernail. "You were captured." "I was noticed," she corrected. "On purpose." The room chilled. Jeeves' eye blinked in a slow, calculating motion. "Explain." "I walked into your trap. Smiled for your cameras. Let your hunters bag me like a prize deer." She leaned in, eyes gleaming. "Because I wanted to be here. You wanted to be imprisoned." Zeller scoffed. "Pathetic." "Not imprisoned," she said. "Positioned." A pause. The Grand Inquisitor turned toward his datapad, beginning a deeper scan. Arden shifted in her seat. "You see, the thing about humans," she said, "we don't always play to win. Sometimes we just play to change the game." Zeller clenched a fist. "You dare mock." Suddenly, the lights flickered. The walls hummed with something not in their control. A second later, every display screen in the chamber shifted. The alien symbols dissolved. In their place appeared a single line of Terran text. "Operation Needle Drop. Execute Phase 2. The words blinked once, then vanished. The alarms didn't go off. They'd been silenced, disabled weeks ago. Jeeves stumbled backward. That code, that was internal. Empire-grade encryption. No one could have cracked it. Arden interrupted, rising slowly. "Nah, we didn't crack your encryption. We wrote it." The silence in the chamber roared. "You lie," Zeller growled. Arden took 2 steps forward. 17 cycles ago, your empire harvested a backwater station near Saturn's orbit. Took a bunch of civilians. Thought they were weak. Among them was a kid, 10 years old. Her parents? Quantum physicists. You killed them. Made the kid watch. She let the weight hang. That kid learned fast. Spent the next decade bouncing through resistance channels, learning your systems, simulating your AI. She got real good. So good, she built something special. Something invisible. She tapped her temple. "Me." Zeller's voice cracked as he barked, Identity sequence. Scan her. Now. Jeeve activated the panel. Arden stood calmly as the beams passed over her, then paused, then turned red. The display flashed in violent alien text. Classification, Omega entity. Do not engage. High threat index. Level, exterminate. Then it crashed. Arden cracked her neck. I'm the message your empire's been intercepting for the past 2 years, but couldn't decode. The anomaly in your system. The shadow in your comms. I'm not here to answer your questions. I'm here to end them. Terminate her. Zeller roared. 2 enforcers surged forward. Fast. Synchronized. Deadly. Arden didn't move. Before they reached her, both convulsed mid-stride. Their armor locked. Their limbs seized. They collapsed, twitching. Jeeve froze. How? Neural override virus. Planted through your own training simulations, Arden said, stepping over them. They thought they were running combat drills. They were teaching their muscles to obey me. Zeller raised his weapon, hand trembling. Do it, she said. He hesitated. For the first time, his breathing shifted. Uncertainty. She saw it. No species evolves this fast, Jeeve whispered, shaking. This isn't possible. Is this doubt? Arden asked, eyes wide in mock concern. Careful. It's addictive. Above them, the ship's AI spoke, only it wasn't the ship's voice. It was hers. Command override accepted. Human designation, Arden Cross. Access all. Lights across the ship turned from sterile white to a deep, pulsing red. On every deck, doors sealed. Weapons disarmed. Life support rerouted. Zeller stepped back. This ship, this empire, is bleeding, she said. From the inside out, a holomap appeared in the center of the room, detailing the entire Empire fleet. One by one, ships turned red, offline, subverted, out of sync. Phase 2, Arden said quietly. Needle drop was the upload. This is the drop. She looked to the window. Far in the distance, an explosion bloomed in space, silent and perfect. A dry dock exploding from the inside. Jeeve dropped to a knee, not in reverence, but collapse. I don't understand. You don't have to, she replied. You only have to remember. A new transmission bled across every monitor. Human language. Earthborn tongue. You have something of ours. Now we take everything of yours. And below that, begin Phase 3, Homecoming. Zeller fled the chamber. Arden didn't chase. She turned toward the mirrored glass, her gaze piercing the hidden watchers behind it. To whoever's still listening, she said, I'm not the one you should be afraid of. She paused. I'm just the first. Behind her, the ship began to groan, not from damage, but transformation. Hull plates shifting, folding inward. Systems mutating. The Voraktel was being rewritten from the inside out, converted. Earth tech, forged in chaos, now colonized an Empire flagship. She turned and walked out of the chamber as calmly as she'd entered. No guard stopped her. They couldn't. She passed a hallway where soldiers stood paralyzed in fear, watching their own weapons disassemble themselves mid-air. One tried to speak. She silenced him with a glance. Tell your leaders, she said as she passed. You didn't lose control. You gave it away. The corridor lit with a cascade of light as the ship's AI finished rebooting, now fully integrated into Terran architecture. The alien operating system had been overwritten with a prototype created from an ancient piece of Earth software known as Clippy. A small paperclip icon blinked onto every screen. It looks like you're trying to surrender. Would you like help with that? She smirked. When she reached the command bridge, the doors slid open without a sound. The alien officers inside scrambled to ready weapons, but they were already offline. She walked to the central throne and sat, stretching. Cozy, she muttered. A hologram of Earth's Resistance Council appeared in front of her, beaming through layers of encryption only she could navigate. You're early, one of the councilmen said. I was bored, she replied. They laughed. She didn't. I'm in. Ship's ours. They're scrambling. Activate Phase 4. A pause. The head of the council leaned forward. Are they ready to listen? Arden stared into the void outside the viewport. Stars danced in ignorance. Somewhere in the dark, a great power was stirring. Not human, not alien, other. No, she said. But they will be. She cut the transmission, then turned her chair slowly, addressing the few remaining alien officers cowering in the command deck. You thought this was about Earth, she asked. No, this was about evolution. She leaned forward. And yours is overdue. And somewhere deep within the ship's core, a new signal ignited, broadcasting across the Empire's networks. It carried no words, just one frequency. And everyone who heard it felt the same thing. A warning. And far beyond the Empire's furthest borders, something ancient, something vast, turned toward the noise. And smiled. The Empire hadn't fallen. Not yet. But it was bleeding. From deep within its shimmering, almost organic fleet, vessels older than some stars, architecture grown rather than built, an infection was spreading. Not one of flesh or spores, but of code, of will, of chaos. Admiral Zeller stood in the center of the Voraktel's war chamber, surrounded by collapsing data. The screens, once elegant displays of orbital supremacy, now glitched with dancing Terran symbols and recursive loops of incomprehensible static. Maps flickered. Command structures scrambled. Identification systems began misreading friend as foe. He clenched his jaw, mandibles twitching involuntarily. Cut the bridge feed, he barked. His order was followed by a hum of compliance from what was left of the bridge crew. Too many had fled, panicked, or frozen. Their superior cognitive structures weren't designed to process unpredictability at this scale. And that was the true infection, not the corrupted code. It was her, Arden Cross, human, supposed prisoner, now something else entirely. He hadn't underestimated her. He had underestimated her kind. They had mistaken resilience for weakness, madness for disorganization. In truth, humans had weaponized their chaos, turned unpredictability into strategy. And now, somehow, the Voraktel, once the Empire's pride, was turning against itself under her control. He turned to the ship's AI core technician, a gelatinous being known as Scylla. Status, he growled. The being shimmered nervously. The command protocols have mutated. Our hierarchy has been replaced by recursive logic forks. I can no longer differentiate between hostile input and system repair. In Imperial, Zeller snapped. She wrote her name into the root code, Selah whispered. This ship now speaks her language. A rumble shook the walls, deep and alive, as if the vessel itself resented its master. Across the chamber, Jeev watched in stunned silence. The Grand Inquisitor's many eyes blinked erratically. He had spent centuries decoding sentient behavior, reading the truths beneath expressions, postures, pheromonal cues. But this Arden Cross, was an anomaly. No fear, no ego, no traceable motives. Just a cold determination wrapped in wit and a terrifying adaptability. She's not leading an invasion, he murmured aloud. She is the invasion. Zeller rounded on him. How could she override an entire flagship? Even your theories had limits. She didn't override it, Jeev replied. She mirrored it, fed it back to itself. A perfect storm of mimicry and subversion, like water shaping to a cup and then cracking it from within. They both turned as the chamber doors hissed open. And there she was, Arden Cross, dressed in an alien officer's coat 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled up, walking with the effortless arrogance of someone who had already won. A drone floated silently behind her, one of theirs now repurposed, its language module chirping with a faint earth melody, a distorted version of Bohemian Rhapsody. Zeller reached for his weapon, thought better of it. He wasn't sure it would fire. Or, worse, he wasn't sure it would fire at her. She stopped in front of the war table, stared at the scrambled star maps like she'd seen them 1,000 times. Your tactical overlays are out of date, she said flatly. Your outer rim flotillas? Offline. Choke point fleets? Hacked and redirection underway. Industrial moons? Yeah, you're going to want to check on those. You're bluffing, Zeller growled. Arden didn't look up. You still think this is poker? We passed chess 30 minutes ago. Welcome to jazz. Jeev stepped forward cautiously. We have studied your species, your culture, your deviance. Nothing in our models predicted this. I'm flattered, she said, still inspecting the maps. But you didn't study us. You cataloged us. You saw bipedal noisemakers who argue and panic and contradict themselves, and called it inferior. She finally looked up, her voice harder now. You never asked why we kept surviving. Another tremor pulsed through the deck, this time not from within the ship, but from outside. One of the bridge officers gasped as a live feed appeared, unauthorized. A space station the size of a small planet, one of the Empire's critical intelligence hubs, began to collapse in real time, every failsafe sabotaged. Station Varix, 7 gone, someone muttered. Arden tilted her head. That's the one where you dissected our pilots for fun, yeah? No one responded. I thought so. Zeller's voice was thin now, trembling with something he hadn't felt since the First War. You came to die. She stepped closer. No. I came to show you that death isn't the worst thing that can happen to an empire. She placed a small device on the war table. It spun once, unfolded into a tiny projector, and beamed a map, one they hadn't seen before. It was the Empire, and every red mark was internal. Your systems have been compromised. Not today, not last week, for months. Long enough for us to study your energy distributions, your AI protocols, your battle simulations. You were so busy tracking our resistance ships, you never thought to check your own supply chain. You poisoned us. Closer to a symbiote, she said. Your empire gave us the tools to build the infection. We just repurposed it. Jeeves' voice cracked. You said you were just the first. How many of you are there? Arden smiled. You're still thinking in numbers. This was never about a fleet. This was about ideas. And you let me upload mine. A high-pitched tone pulsed across the ship's internal speakers. A countdown. Jeeves turned pale. That's not one of ours. It is now, she said. 10 seconds. Zeller barked orders, but systems refused him. Command hierarchy had been inverted. Arden didn't move. The countdown reached 0. Silence. Then a sudden shift. The entire ship's gravitational field pulsed. Every screen reset. Lights turned blue. The ship was no longer bleeding. It was human. Sayla gasped. I don't understand. She didn't destroy us. She converted us. Arden turned to the crew. I know what you're thinking. Surrender, right? That's the move. Raise your claws, bow your heads, and maybe, just maybe, we'll let you keep your moons. She walked toward the window, stared at the Empire's core world glittering beneath. But here's the thing. We don't want your moons. We don't want your temples or your thrones. We want you to understand. You've ruled through fear, and we've learned that fear has limits. But chaos? Chaos learns. Chaos grows. Zeller's knees buckled. How did your species come to this? Arden turned, face unreadable. We were never meant to win. Every war, we started late. Smaller. We lost the first punch. Every time. But then, she paused, looking him straight in his eyes. We got back up. Silence. Then, from behind, a voice spoke, a young alien officer, barely of age. What do we do now? Everyone turned to Arden. She exhaled slowly. Now, she walked to the throne at the command deck and sat down. It welcomed her. Now you listen. The atmosphere shifted. The bridge, once hostile, now hung in a strange calm. Something between surrender and awe. Listen to what? Jeeves asked, voice barely audible. To what's coming, Arden said. You've been staring outward for so long, you never noticed what you woke up. That signal you hijacked from our solar system 2 years ago? It wasn't ours. It was a warning. But you pushed it. You amplified it. And now something's listening. A comms officer turned pale. Ma'am, we just received a frequency bounce back. Not from inside our territory. From where? Jeeves asked sharply. The officer looked at Arden. From outside the mapped galaxy. She nodded. And there it is. They stared at her, minds racing, hearts pounding. I'm not the end of the war, Arden said, standing. I'm the beginning of the response. She moved toward the door. The ship no longer denied her. Zeller rose, weakly. If we help you. She stopped. If we help you, will it save us? She looked over her shoulder. That depends, she said. Can you evolve? Then she was gone, leaving the throne cold. The bridge buzzing with the new, unwelcome sound of human orchestral music playing through the speakers. Something old, grand. A symphony that suggested not triumph, but preparation. And far above them, the stars shimmered unnaturally, as if something out there had turned to look back. They had never seen a war like this. For millennia, the Galactic Empire had perfected conflict. Wars were algorithmic, strategy calculated, victory ensured by overwhelming force and rigid hierarchy. There was a handbook, a doctrine, a path from skirmish to subjugation. Enemies followed it until they broke. Until now. Now the handbook was fire, and Ardencross was dancing in the ashes. Inside the central nerve station of the repurposed Vorectel, Arden stood at the helm, arms folded, eyes sharp, the ghost of a grin tugging at her lips. The throne-like command chair accepted her, as though it had always belonged to her. All around her, the interface pulsed with earth-coded patterns stitched into alien hardware, the perfect marriage of stolen genius and desperate innovation. The bridge was staffed by a strange crew now, some humans, freshly phased in through secure teleport nodes, others still alien officers, too stunned or too curious to flee. The Empire hadn't officially surrendered, not yet. But the silence stretching across its vast network of worlds told the same story. Admiral Zeller remained, battered but not broken, standing beside her like a prisoner made into an unwilling advisor. He watched her with a mix of hatred and awe, a reptilian frown etched deep into his ridged face. "You've shattered galactic law," he said, his voice hoarse. "This kind of attack violates every accord, every code." Arden didn't look at him. "I'm not here for your laws. I'm here for your truths." Behind her, Lieutenant Omar Reyes, Terra Navy, 2nd Fleet, stepped forward, handing her a freshly decrypted report. "We've confirmed breaches on all Empire-wide communication arrays. Chaos Protocol is live." "Casualties?" she asked. "Minimal. Their defenses still think everything's fine." "Perfect." Zeller narrowed his eyes. "What is the Chaos Protocol?" Arden turned to face him. "It's the part where you learn that confusion is the deadliest weapon in the universe." He sneered. "You're proud of disorder?" She leaned closer. "I'm proud of the outcomes." Across the galaxy, what had once been Empire territory now buckled under its own weight. The fleets that had terrorized entire species were firing on each other. Factories produced nothing but errors. AI drones executed orders sent days ago by people who no longer held command. The systems, the very idea of control, was collapsing. The Chaos Protocol wasn't sabotage. It was a mirror. Every weakness, every rigid structure, every unpatched arrogance. Arden had mapped them, exploited them, and now let the Empire drown in its own symmetry. She didn't destroy the machine. She made it forget which parts were screws and which were gears. Jeev entered, quieter than usual. His robes were torn. The Grand Inquisitor no longer carried his ceremonial staff. He had become something new, an observer trying to understand a world his models could not predict. "I have been reviewing the data," he said slowly. "Your tactics have no central rhythm, no strategic spine. Every move is a contradiction." "Exactly," Arden said, nodding. "We learn from jazz and hurricanes." Jeev looked at her, something almost human flickering in his many eyes. "You said this isn't about revenge." "It's not." "Then what is it?" Arden stepped to the hollow table and activated the latest feed. A map unfolded, not of the Empire, but of its fractures. Systems rebelling. Outer colonies declaring independence. Peace treaties signed under threat of Earthian amnesty. "We're not here to kill your empire," she said. "We're here to infect it. With ideas. Doubt. Change. Humanity doesn't conquer. We disrupt." Jeeves stared at the map. "That's worse. Depends who you are." A nearby console beeped. Omar leaned in. "New contact. Not Empire. Unregistered ship just phased in from outside map sectors." "Show me." The screen flickered. An outline emerged, dark, cold, silent. No comms. No identity tags. No known propulsion. Arden stepped closer. The hair on her neck lifted. "That's not one of ours," she said quietly. Zeller's expression changed. Something ancient crossed his face. "I've seen that design," he whispered. "In relic records. Something the founders found and never spoke of." The ship hovered in deep space, utterly still. Then a pulse, barely perceptible, rippled from it. Across the bridge, lights dimmed. Systems rebooted. The atmosphere turned dense, like something pressing against their minds. Jeeves swayed. "This isn't war tech. This is observation. It's watching us." Another pulse. Arden clenched her fists. It responded to the chaos protocol. Zeller snapped toward her. "You signaled it." "No," she said. "But I did wake it." "Why?" "Because you forced our hand. Your empire poked every star, cracked every tomb, and thought nothing would ever poke back." She turned to the crew. "Bring me a secure line to Earth Command. No bounce relays. Direct pulse." The crew obeyed. Zeller grabbed her arm. "If you've unleashed something we can't fight." Arden didn't flinch. "Then we fight it together." He didn't speak. His silence was agreement. The secure channel buzzed open. Admiral Helena Park appeared in the static haze. Eyes sharp, voice calm. "You found it, didn't you?" she asked. Arden nodded. "It noticed our signal bounce." Park exhaled. "So be it. Final protocol authorization." "Yes," Arden replied. "Begin contingency archives. Sync resistance outposts. No direct engagement." Park nodded and vanished. Jeeves blinked, confused. "You humans, you plan for this?" Arden turned to him. "We plan for everything. It's the only reason we're still alive." The bridge shook again, this time a psychic resonance. Every alien on board staggered, clutching their heads. The foreign ship hadn't moved, but its very presence began rewriting local physics. Omar looked pale. "Ma'am, we can't scan it. The data collapses when observed." Zeller hissed, backing away. "What is that?" "A response," Arden said. "To everything. To conquest. To chaos. To consciousness." For a moment, the lights dimmed. When they returned, one of the screens glitched, then displayed a simple phrase in Terran English. "Error. Insufficient dimensional permission." Silence. Even Arden felt a chill. "Is that directed at us?" Omar asked. "No," she whispered. "It's directed at reality." She stepped back. Her breath had quickened. She hated that. Jeeves approached her, uncharacteristically slow. "You said you came here to wake the Empire up." "I did." "Then what now?" "You've broken it. You've infected it. What more do you want?" Arden turned toward the viewport. The unknown ship remained in the distance, unmoving but felt. She placed a hand against the glass. "Now," she said, "we find out if we're the infection or the immune system." Behind her, Omar quietly said, "We've got an incoming ping. From inside the unknown ship." Arden raised an eyebrow. "Translate." "It's musical. Vibrational. Not language. A pattern." "Feed it through the symphonic matrix," she ordered. "Give it something to talk to." Within moments, the comms AI began to convert the pattern into harmonics. Slowly, a melody emerged, dark, droning, almost organic. It was familiar. And then it hit her. The notes. They matched a Terran frequency. One that Earth used to test deep space echoes. Zeller saw her reaction. "What?" She turned, stunned. "They're mimicking us." Jeeves' voice was hollow. "You think we woke something. But maybe it was trying to wake us." Arden looked back at the ship. It hadn't moved, but the universe around it felt tighter now, denser. And just as she was about to speak, the unknown ship blinked out of existence. No jump trail. No warp. Just gone. Like it had never been there at all. Omar stared. "We lost it." "No," Arden said. "We passed its test." A pause. She stepped back to the command chair and sat, slowly, thoughtfully. Chaos Protocol had done more than collapse an empire. It had announced humanity, not just to enemies, but to whatever else was out there. Zeller looked at her one last time, voice low. Do you believe we'll survive what comes next? Arden didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, that depends. On what? She looked at him, the faintest smile on her lips. On whether you're done fearing humans and ready to become one. Behind her, the system rebooted again. And this time, the music that played through the bridge wasn't earthborn or alien-coded. It was something entirely new. And it was just beginning. The Grand Council of the Galactic Empire had not convened in over 1,000 years. Now they sat silent and stiff within the hollowed crystal throne hall of Ylner, the heart of the Empire. 12 of the most ancient minds in the known universe, beings who ruled not by votes or battles, but by the immovable gravity of legacy. Their shapes differed, scaled, faceted, vaporous, but each carried the same expression now. Uncertainty. At the center of the hall, a glowing circle flared to life. A voice echoed from it, not shouted, but clear, steady, undeniable. I didn't come here to destroy you, Arden Cross said. I came to show you who you really are. The transmission ended. The silence that followed was longer than protocol allowed. A lone counselor finally spoke. She has no species standing, no empire sanction, no seat. She has a ship, said another. Your ship. And our AI cores. And our soldiers. And came the soft, bitter addition from one of the older members, our fear. Not all of them believed the human could truly unravel 10,000 years of structure. But belief was no longer relevant. Across the systems they no longer controlled. Her voice echoed. Not as a conqueror. Not as a tyrant. As a mirror. And the reflection was ugly. On the bridge of the Vorectel, Arden Cross didn't smile. She didn't need to anymore. She had become the smile behind the silence. Around her, humans and aliens worked side by side. The bridge had changed, its rigid empire design softened by Terran chaos. A caffeine station glowed in the corner. Earth slang crept into the comms. Sarcasm flavored the air. But beneath it all, the ship moved with a kind of unity the Empire had never known. They weren't conquering. They were transforming. Status report, Arden said. Omar tapped a few keys. 10 sectors realigned. 2 councils dissolved themselves. 1 offered to join Earth's union outright. Voluntarily. With cake, apparently. Arden nodded once. Progress. Behind her, Zeller stood at attention. No longer a prisoner. Not quite an ally. Something in between. A war relic learning how to be something else. I never thought I'd be taking orders from a species that needed 3 movies to beat a shark, he muttered. She arched her brow. We gave that shark a name. That's how dangerous we are. You're not just dangerous, said a new voice. Jeeves stepped into view, datapad in hand. His many eyes blinked with something unreadable. Reverence. Curiosity. Possibly even fear. You're contagious. Still not contagious enough, Arden said. We haven't broken their story yet. Just cracked it. They will resist, Zeller said. They already are, Jeeves added. But something shifted. Their resistance feels small. Arden looked out the viewport. Because they're still playing the game. We've started writing a new one. The signal came then, buried deep in Terran subspace. A code only Arden recognized. It pulsed once. Twice. Her eyes darkened. She turned. Full priority channel. Earth command. Omar blinked. Ma'am. Now. The screen bloomed to life. Admiral Park appeared again, expression grim. It started, she said, without preamble. The anomaly? Arden asked. No longer an anomaly. It's moving. Predictive models. Place it in our quadrant within 8 cycles. Intent. We don't know. But it's not alone anymore. Arden's throat tightened. And the others? Watching. Quiet. Ancient. Not aligned with any species we've cataloged. Zeller stepped forward. You woke them. Park nodded. No. We woke them. The Empire's neural probes tore through layers they were never meant to reach. Arden just turned on the light. The screen faded. The bridge fell into silence again. Arden stood still, eyes fixed on nothing. She'd come to infect the Empire with doubt. With change. With something dangerously human. But she hadn't expected what would be waiting on the other side of victory. Something bigger. Something watching. "Deploy the fleets," she said at last. "Not to fight. To speak." Zeller stiffened. "We talk to the dark." "We do," Arden said. "Because if we don't, we scream into it." The command went out. Ships launched. Not in formation, but in patterns of signal. Message before weapon. Unity before fear. For the first time in recorded history, Earth and the Empire moved as one, not out of loyalty, but necessity. At the edge of known space, the stars began to shift. They didn't twinkle. They twitched. Arden stood at the edge of the command deck, silent. Her heart beat slower than usual. Calculated calm. She remembered a saying from Earth, a joke passed around broken camps and smoking ruins after the first orbital strikes. If you want to kill a god, first teach it your name. Now gods were listening. She turned to Zeller. "What do your people call that region of space?" He hesitated. "We don't." "Then it's ours to name." She stepped forward. "Call it the breakpoint." Jeev bowed his head. "It is fitting." Omar checked his console. Incoming signal. Same coordinates. Same harmonic language. Everyone froze. Arden nodded. On screen. The image was incomplete. Not a ship. Not a being. A shape that didn't make sense. A suggestion of geometry. A distortion of scale. Like reality was glitching, trying to resolve something older than time. Then a sound. Not heard, but felt. Inside bone. Inside memory. And a single word appeared, rendered in every language known. "Remarkable." Arden whispered, "It's not just watching us. It's studying us." Then the final message pulsed. The game begins. The stars blinked. The shape vanished. Every console reset. And for one impossible moment across the galaxy, every sentient being, human or otherwise, dreamed the same dream. A woman standing alone in a throne made of broken stars. Laughing.